Welcome. Welcome to the Venture Houston Pitch Competition. This is the first year of the competition, and we'll have over 1.7 million in prizes awarded over the next 2 days. Today we have the semifinal round, and tomorrow we will have the finalists with the 6 top teams. Each team today will have 5 minutes to present, followed by 7 minutes of Q&A from our investor panel. We have with us 4 experts, venture capitalists who have joined us today, and you'll see them during each of the Q&A sessions. Joining me today are Heath Butler from the Mercury Fund, Tom Ball from Next Coast Ventures, Joe Rempe from Montrose Lane, which was formerly known as the Cottonwood Venture Partners Fund, and Venu Shamapant from LiveOak Venture Partners. We'll have 5 startups that'll pitch. Well, then we'll take a short break, and then we'll have the final 5 pitches. And we will announce the winners at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So stay tuned for the announcement of the top pitches, the top startups from this session, who will advance to the finals. So this is track number 1. We're the Astros track, so we're sure to win the World Series. All right, so here we go. The first startup presenting this afternoon in this session is Belmont Technologies. Welcome, Belmont. If you would share your screen, and I see you've unmuted yourself. Great.
All right, do you see the slide deck in full screen?
We do.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am Jean-Marie Laigle. I am the CEO and co-founder of Belmont Technology. In many industries today, the workforce is changing dramatically because many companies are building their own technology. As an example of the magnitude of this change, the number of software engineers and data scientists at a major energy company has been multiplied by 10 in just 2 years. This new workforce is tasked to build the proprietary software technology of these companies and productize the IP. But still today, delivering software is incredibly expensive. Belmont develops a no-code platform, which named Sandy, which democratizes code delivery and access and accelerate innovation. So there's been a lot of effort spent in automating business function or extracting insights from data. But there is one area which we believe is vastly untapped, which is a software engineering function. And if we automate this function, we can certainly deliver reduction of operational cost by orders of magnitude. Software engineering is absolutely required, so the code developed by data scientists and citizen developers is going to perform reliably and at scale. But the processes and the tools for testing, monitoring, auditing are very complex and expensive to set up. Also front-end, back-end, deployment, data access requires a large workforce in order to be solved. The technology that Belmont develops is named the Pebble technology. It automates completely the software engineering function. So the code that data scientists or citizen developers produce can be delivered to end users or to dashboard in a fraction of the time. It is fast, it is reliable, there is absolutely no learning curve. It offers a reduction in terms of time of cost by orders of magnitude and also provide additional benefits per design. So think of a pebble as a small brick that can be combined with other. Actually, a pebble turns your code into a scalable microservice, which is automatically hosted by the Sandy platform. Every data scientist or citizen developers can create such a pebble. Imagine that you have a piece of Python code that runs locally on your laptop and does something useful. This is something that you can simply upload in the Sandy platform, and that's going to be converted automatically into a tiny web app. There will be even a front end that we can create automatically. You can combine these pebbles together with no code to build complex digital workflows. And the technology is capable of automatically writing unit testing, for instance, but also monitoring and auditing. So with the Pebble technology, everyone in an organization is empowered to deliver innovation autonomously, instantly, and reliably. Cloud technology is a very large market, and Sandy and Pebbles are a layer on top of existing solutions, but also we fill the gap in the existing technology stacks. This table presents a number of players in this market, either on the software engineering side or on the data science side, and some gaps that would need to be filled in order to deliver the acceleration that we are looking for. For instance, I've mentioned unit testing. Data scientists don't like to write unit testing at all. The Pebble technology automates the writing of these unit tests. That's one example of the application of the technology. Or monitoring is also something that comes automatically per design. Knowledge sharing, knowing who is using what, with what data, or automation of the front end, which saves a lot of money. I'd like to provide a couple of examples of the application of Pebbles besides the infrastructure aspect. Because we automate the front end, it's extremely easy to embed Pebbles in documents, in messages, in dashboard to share interactive content, or to combine them in a conversational interface. Building a smart assistant, which is going to trigger complex function as a response to an input in natural language, is almost trivial with the Pebble technology, a byproduct of the design. I was mentioning automation, of course, but also recommendation, knowledge sharing, knowing what to do with what data or what can be achieved with this data set, which are use cases that organizations are pursuing in their digitalization effort and which can be solved with Pebbles. Belmont Technology has been founded by myself and Geoffroy Pexach in 2017.
Jean-Marie, I think your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies, but time is up. We'll move to Q&A now.
Right.
All right, if you would unmute and go ahead and start asking your questions. You have 7 minutes for questions.
So Jean-Marie, how many customers do you have and who are they? It looks like it's energy specific, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So oil and gas is our primary market. This is where we have started. We have today 8 paying customers in this market. We have received funds from BP Ventures and Repsol Ventures, which are also customers, along with BHP, Heath, Shell, Marathon, but also companies in Norway like Aker BP or Neptune Energy.
Jean-Marie, is there anything in your solution that makes it more applicable to a vertical industry like oil and gas? And if so, what does it take for it to kind of address other markets?
Right. So the solution is fundamentally horizontal. It's part of the story of the companies that we have started in oil and gas because we've got a lot of traction to help solving a number of problems. And the Pebble technology that we are bringing to market today is also a consequence of working on solving these problems. But per design, there is nothing that makes it more specific to oil and gas or to any other industries. That's why we would like to start penetrating other verticals as well.
Jean-Marie, what type of success have your clients had thus far? Can you tell us a little bit about a case study or just kind of soup to nuts?
Yeah, absolutely. I was showing, for instance, building smart assistant, answering a question on databases and running analytics which are triggered by natural language. This is, for instance, one great example of a solution that we have developed for a customer with Pebbles, and that we are now bringing to market to other companies in the oil and gas. That's a great one. We are also helping companies to develop packages that interface post-processing of numerical simulation. These are complex workflows which require many different functions, but developing this with Pebbles is extremely easy per design. And so people can start combining this function together in a very, very elegant way.
And how are you pricing it?
So that's priced as according to a software as a service model. So companies are paying a monthly subscription to access infrastructure and develop their own Pebbles.
But is it at a per user level? Like, I mean, do you go, and it ties into a go-to-market question.
So today,
your customer and how do they find you?
Yeah, so today it's a per user model. but we are in discussion to sell enterprise licenses as well.
And what does an average customer per user pay you per month to use the
So
platform?
that's the package is around $10,000 for a group of users for 1 month.
You guys are starting with oil and gas, but just running through the customers that you went through earlier. Notice they're all massive names. Do you find the value prop is maybe that was just coincidence, but you find the value prop is still just as strong, with the smaller guys?
Is the value proposition strong for smaller companies? Is that what you say?
Yeah, and the only reason I was asking is the kind of 8 customers you referenced were all just some of the most massive companies in the space.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering how you started there.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think that we are really appealing for companies which are really engaged in a digitalization process and with the process of developing their own technology. So this is where we are really useful today and where we have the most engagement. And this is what's happening at all of these companies which are customers of Belmont today. Now, someone would like to buy something which is off the shelf and not start developing their own pebbles, for instance, or equip their own data science group with this technology, would not really shop with us today unless we provide packages of these pebbles that they can start using right away. So that's a business line that we are thinking about, but today this is not what we are doing.
And how do you sell it? Who do you sell it to, and how do you sell it?
You mean what's the price point, or who are the stakeholders who we are discussing with?
Both.
Yeah. So I have answered on the price already. So that's a monthly subscription, $10,000 for a group of users who can start developing their own pebbles. So stakeholders today are data science groups, which are delivering basically code and innovation to business units. And business units who are interested to use this code. So we are in interface between both.
So you have a traditional kind of enterprise sales team that is calling on these companies, or do you have the data scientists actually already playing on your system and they can upgrade to becoming a paying customer?
So this is where we are going to. So today, how we have penetrated these companies is with a business development teams selling enterprise licenses. But there is a great potential for virality in this that we start seeing building up, and the adoption is actually really fast.
So I'm curious, how many applications are actually running on your system right now that are end customer developed?
There is a few per company as of today. Belmont has started to scaling up this operation just 2 years ago, and there's been a lot of heavy lifting to get there. So I believe that's the beginning of the story. So that's, as of today, a couple per company.
Anybody on the team you want to highlight or tell us about? Any other?
Yeah, absolutely. So my co-founder, Geoffroy Pexage, who is in charge of the business development, is definitely a fantastic person who has helped to penetrate all of these companies. We have really a couple of top developers who have helped us to think out of the box to imagine this solution, like Eric R., which is a PhD working with us on the software engineering aspects, and which is definitely a key element in Belmont.
Thank you, Jean-Marie.
Yes.
I apologize, but your time is up. Thank you for that, Jean-Marie. Thanks for presenting. Thanks for presenting Belmont Technology this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, well, we will move now. We'll begin to move to our second presenter for this afternoon. The second presenter is Blake Manuel. Blake will be presenting Cemvita Factory. So Blake, whenever you're ready.
All right.
You have 5 minutes. Good, we can see your screen.
Awesome. Hello all, I'm Blake Manuel, Director of Corporate Development at Cemvita Factory, where we are harnessing the power of nature to reduce carbon emissions in heavy industries. Let's talk about something that no one's really covering right now, climate change. Currently, high CO2 levels are leading to climate change, and according to reports such as those by IPCC, we know that simply reducing emissions is not enough. This has led to immense social pressure on emitters of carbon, such as heavy industries, think oil and gas, petrochemicals, mining, to reduce their emissions, which represent roughly 1/3 of carbon emissions. On top of this, we view CO2 as a valuable resource and believe it is being wasted. So how do we plan to solve this? By harnessing the power of nature using synthetic biology. And you're asking yourself, what is synthetic biology? It's a fancy phrase that impresses people, but really it just means enhancing or engineering genes of microorganisms. I know what you're thinking. This sounds like wild science fiction stuff, but kind of yes and kind of no. For millennia, we've been using microbes to make things like alcohol and beer by feeding sugar to yeast. Thanks to modern science, we have the power to sequence and edit DNA of millions of various organisms, and this allows us to fine-tune these reactions found in nature that make them economical for industrial applications. The picture on your left shows just that. We can use bioinformatics, which is the study of biological data, to find and create these powerful organisms that can use CO2 and CH4 as feedstock and produce an industrial chemical product. Along with being able to utilize feedstock that is seen as a waste and harmful, the technology is IP driven, as engineered organisms can be protected along with trade secrets for editing those genes. And the process can be scaled for various applications and is relatively low in CapEx compared to conventional chemical manufacturing methods due to ambient pressure and temperature requirements. While there are numerous applications for our technology, we're initially focusing on the petrochemical manufacturing market, which is approximately $440 billion, and $17 billion of that is chemical technology licensing, where we will focus as a platform company. Also, in general, the carbon capture and utilization market is currently $3 billion and is expected to grow to $6 billion by 2026, which we think is a very conservative estimate, considering the kind of market uptick in demand for these services. So how do we operate? Like I mentioned, we're a platform company. This means we won't own or operate the chemical plants ourselves, but we will work with industry partners to develop the technology to bring it to market, where we will license that technology. This allows us to focus on our expertise of biotechnology and scale faster by working with those who have experience in large CapEx projects. We will work with these partners to scale up the applications starting in phase 1, where we demonstrate feasibility at lab scale and perform most of our research and begin genetic engineering. In phase 2, we begin to develop downstream processing and scale the reaction to 1,000 liters while continuing to optimize the strain throughout using engineering. In phase 3, we'll work with the client to demonstrate the full production process through a pilot plant, then move on to full commercial scale plant after that. We currently have performed 3 projects in phase 1 in the chemical space, with one, our bioethylene project that we're partnering with Oxy, is in phase 2, and then we have another one pending move from phase 1 to phase 2. With this platform, we did $1.2 million in revenue in 2020 and projecting a little over $6 million in 2021. So where does Cemvita Factory fit in the industrial synthetic biology landscape? We differentiate ourselves by focusing on CO2 as a feedstock and as operation as a platform company. This allows us to tackle a major issue for our heavy industry clients, carbon emission reduction, and scale quickly through a platform model where we aren't as capital constrained. So who is going to take us on this carbon utilization promised land trip? This team right here, a mix of scientists, engineers, business folks, streamers, industry experts, and all around nerdy group of guys. Tara Karimi is our co-founder and chief technology officer and the brains of the operation, with over 20 years studying biomimicry and a Springer book on the topic. Trong and Marcio have over 30 years between them in micro and molecular biology at the academic and startup level. On the commercial side, we have Moji Karimi, our CEO and co-founder, who has been commercializing new technology in oil and gas his entire career, from everything including hardware and DNA sequencing maps to the subsurface at the startup and big company level. Myself, I've spent 15 years between industry and management consulting doing a variety of operations within the energy space. Thank you. And in closing, we are raising our $50 million Series A and have 12 million soft circled between CVCs and VCs and are currently looking for our lead investor to close out the round. Any questions?
Thanks. We'll open it up to questions now from the panel.
Like, can you talk about where exactly are you from a de-risking the core technology or the science risk of the company?
So our most advanced project is in phase 2, where we are scaling up into 1,000-liter state. So we're still in a pretty early TRL phase, maybe 3 or 4. And some of what we're going to learn there will transfer to other projects where we're developing other molecules. But as far as our most advanced project, we're in that scale-up phase, and that puts us roughly a year to 2 years before we begin planning and building the pilot commercial plant.
Does Cemvita make economic sense on its own, or do customers need to have some sort of sustainability or ESG goal in mind? Like what's the motivation for Oxy? I think you referenced as a customer.
Yeah, so it's twofold. First and foremost, we focus on the economics of the project without any kind of goodwill for the environment or ESG focus. Our economics, we do the models to make sure they're okay without 45Q credits or anything like that. So it's part of it is we believe biomanufacturing is a core technology that could replace some electrochemical manufacturing. And then having the ability to reduce your emissions is kind of an added kicker and potential economic benefits with 45Q in the US.
So when you think about where a lot of the oil and gas firms are with moving to climate tech, like what has to be true inside the customer's organization for them to start this down a serious sales cycle path for you?
So, coming from being a former operations guy, it really has to be something that's not just the marketing department and the CEO put out some nice new slides about it. You have to have buy-in from the operations guys. And as a former, used to work out in the field in oil and gas, I've kind of been shocked over the last couple of years where you'd walk in a room and you'd expect to spend 30 minutes, going against critics, to these people are interested, want to know what kind of technology, how can you help? And it's important to get that operations driven thought process, because you can't have it forced down from the corporate side. It has to be belief in it from the operations team.
And how many calls have you been on? Can you give us some perspective about the volume of those kinds of comments compared to you sort of getting a flat out no, or we're not ready? So what's the volume like?
I'd say pretty much anyone that's reached out to us, it's been positive. I don't want to say it's 100%, but we're not kind of forcing our way into it. If people find us and we reach out to the chemical companies, and I'd say it's pretty close to 100%. I don't think we've come across anyone. I don't think they would take our phone call if they were that negative.
You're getting a lot of inbound activity?
Yes, especially over the last 12 months. And since Elon Musk tweeted something 2 weeks ago.
All right. Do you think you compete with who do you compete with, or do you compete with them just not doing anything for a while?
Yeah, that's so part of our platform model is that we want to be the partners of these industrial giants. So they're not coming after us and trying to squish us like a bug. We want to leverage their balance sheets and their experience with these large CapEx projects. And so that I'd say just the biggest competitor could be either other startups that are going to try and manufacture the products themselves, or some companies just saying we're going to develop this technology in-house. But having synthetic biology, biotech expertise in-house is kind of a big risk for a lot of these guys, unless they're really going to go all in on it. And
how long does the money last, the 15 million?
That'll give us approximately 24 months.
And you talked about licensing model as kind of your primary monetization model. What technology kind of IP protection have you got? I mean, the core approach of kind of using some sort of synthetic biology is not completely new. So I'm trying to understand kind of how do you protect your position in that economic value chain going forward? Right.
So the specific strain that we engineer and the yield that you get out of that, which is very important to be able to get a certain yield, that will be patentable. And then also we're kind of discovering, and I can't really talk about it, but some novel methods to actually go as part of the biomanufacturing process that enables some of the production of these chemicals that we're filing for protection also.
You guys are obviously in a pretty unique space. How do you think about like the longer term vision for the company and an ultimate exit and so on and so forth?
So while we want to remain a platform company, especially up front, we could see ourselves venturing farther into the value chain as far as providing services and even operating the biomanufacturing units for the plants, or even providing our own setup front end to your processing plant, and you basically run like a toll system. And then as far as an exit, we actually think some of our clients could potentially want, if they consider the biomanufacturing capabilities a big enough core capability in 10 years or 5-10 years where it really starts to take off, that they may want to bring all this expertise in-house. So either that or an existing product company that wants to bring in our CO2 utilization expertise.
One question.
Does your solution have to be customized to every particular client when you work with them?
So each specific creation of a different molecule needs to be created. Some of the things we're learning along the way will speed that up. And also as part of the process, when we develop a molecule for a client, part of what they're incentivized to do is the first 2 phases we talked about, they have kind of exclusive rights. We won't go and market that out to anyone else till we get to the pilot stage. At that point, they can decide if they want an exclusive license, which obviously would be very expensive. And so we will have the opportunity to go say, maybe, someone just wants it in North America, and then we can take the same molecule license technology and license to other manufacturers around the globe or in different industries. And that allows us to scale also.
All right, so Blake, thank you very much. Time is up. Blake, thanks for presenting Cemvita Factory today.
Thank you, everybody.
We will move on to the third presenter of this session. So the next company that will present is Data Gumbo and Andrew Bruce. Andrew, I see you're coming on now. You will turn on your camera and share your screen. Let's make sure we can hear you.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, we hear you. All right. As soon as you can share your screen, you can get started.
You ready to start now?
We're ready. All right, you're up.
All right, well, hello everybody. I'm Andrew Bruce. I'm the CEO of Data Gumbo, where we are building the world's largest smart contract network for industry. In fact, we were given an award by Forbes last year for being the most disruptive innovators in the energy industry. And so you might be asking, how on earth are we doing that? Well, we're all familiar with this analogy, I think. Go to a gas station, we pump gas. And when we do that, what we're doing is we're making an agreement based on the price of the gas, the grade of the gas we chose, and the price, and the amount we chose, the amount we pumped. And when we swipe our credit card, we're also making an agreement with a bank that, to pay an automated and immediate payment. It's a very simple process. We're all familiar with it. We all do it every single day. And this is a far cry from what happens in industry. In industry, we have field tickets, we have invoices, we have disputes, we have reconciliations, we have armies of people checking the checkers. And it is incredibly slow and painful 30 to 40 step process, which means that the customers don't ever know really how much money they're spending, and the service companies don't get paid. In fact, this example right here is exactly how Data Gumbo was originally started. We were working with a very large oil company who said that if they could save a minute per drill pipe connection, that they would be able to save $250 million a year. And I used to work for NOV. I know they can save a minute per drill pipe connection, so why on earth are they not doing it? And the answer is that they couldn't get the drilling contractors to work with them. So I asked permission, went to the drilling contractors and said, why the heck aren't you doing this, guys? You know that I know that you can save a minute. And they said, we would love to, but we just don't trust that we will get paid on time if we're making the improvements. So the problem comes down to trust between counterparties. So how are we solving this? Well, we're building the smart contract network that I told you about, and it's all powered and secured by blockchain. But let's get one thing clear. This has nothing to do with cryptocurrencies. This has nothing to do with mining. This has nothing to do with any of that rubbish. This is a distributed ledger blockchain network. If you look at the middle of the diagram here, you've got IoT data, which is equivalent to the gas pump. It tells you exactly how much product is or service is being delivered. Smart contracts are the digitalization of the agreement that these companies have already got between them. And so what we can do is we can automate smart contracts based on IoT data to turn an industrial transaction into just as easy as a swipe and leave for a gas station. What this does for customers is it provides them transactional certainty and transparency so they know exactly what they're paying for and why, and the services companies get paid on time. And the best part of all of this is ESG is on everybody's lips, it's on the board of directors' lips, on the investors' lips. How on earth do we report on ESG? Well, there's good news. 95% of the data that you need to report on ESG is exactly the same as the data that you need to confirm transactions. And because it is all stored in a blockchain, not only can you automate payments, but you can provide it for automated reporting of ESG, and you've got a perpetual record for audit purposes later on to be able to go and check. And we're not the only guys saying this. Equinor, who is the national oil company of Norway, was quoted this week in Forbes saying that we were a key part of the $20 million savings they expect to realize on the Johan Sverdrup platform this year. And Equinor's got multiple of these platforms. So companies are realizing tens of millions of savings using this process we talked about. So here's the best part. You can get involved too. We're raising $5 million to round out our Series B. And the reason we're doing that is to build out the team that we need to satisfy the demand that we're seeing from companies just like Equinor. We've already got a team of people from companies like Oracle and Salesforce and NOV and Shell and Murphy Oil. And now we need to flesh out the team to satisfy demand. We're backed by companies like Equinor and also Saudi Aramco Ventures. And you can see from this, our financials are looking pretty good. So we're pretty excited about where we are. And I have one simple question. To quote Jerry Maguire, who's coming with me?
Perfect. All right. Well, maybe these folks will come with you, but at least they're going to ask you a few questions. All right.
Hey, Andrew, what are you guys building your own blockchain, or is it an app on top of one of the existing systems?
Yep, we're building our own blockchain. The blockchain solutions that are out there don't satisfy the need for the large amounts of data that you need in the industrial setting, and they don't allow us to tie in with IoT data we need from the field. So we need a way of immutably tying the IoT data into the blocks, and then we need to be able to store large amounts of data so that you've got that permanent record that I talked about. So we had to build our own blockchain.
Is the pricing based upon kind of a savings share, or how do you price it?
Yeah, it's a software as a service subscription fee. Sorry, I should have said that. And we based it on, we have a value calculation with a customer, and then we agree on a share, and that gives you the subscription fee for the year.
So you agree up front, sorry, Venu, you agree up front on what you think the savings is going to be, and then you price it that way?
Correct.
Okay.
And I was going to ask, just building on that, Andrew, just so to get to your 6 million of revenue this year, what does it imply in terms of like how many vendors and their kind of suppliers do you have to kind of agree to transact with trust on your platform?
Well, let me answer it slightly different way. So it represents 1.5 billion in customer spend to go through the blockchain. And just to put that in a little bit more interesting perspective, our sales funnel right now represents about a $16 billion customer spend. So we won't land all that business, but it's the risk pipeline. It means that our stretch goal is to have ARR of 10 million by the end of this year.
I guess I was trying to get a sense for, you could have $1 billion to spend between two people, or you could have $1 billion to spend between one customer, and 100 vendors, right? And it's a different sales motion for you in the second one than in the first one. So I'm trying to get a sense for how is that working out? Are these big guys requiring you to go get all their vendors to convert onto your platform first before you can get that spend on your platform?
No, well, yeah, we start one contract at a time. So for example, with water haulage with Equinor in North America right now, we're starting with Purity and Nuvera, and then they will expand to other vendors. And then the Johannesburg, the counterpart of that is Baker Hughes. So you start building out this network. And the reason the network is so interesting is once you've got a connection to Baker Hughes or to Schlumberger or to whatever oil company, you don't have to build that connection again. You've already got it. So you can the network effect has got a multiplier effect, which is obviously part of the biggest value of the company.
Andrew, picking up on that, is it when you describe the network, is it linear in the sense that you start at one contract and then both sides are kind of backward integrating and forward integrating into that particular workflow value chain, and that's how you're expanding it?
Yes. Yeah, and so I mean that actually gets into a key part of the ESG reporting as well, right? Because then you can get into the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 reporting, right. because you're in order to be able to automate one of these contracts, you're typically getting data from multiple parts of the supply chain, and that gives you the ability to do your tier 2 and tier 3 reporting as well as your tier 1. But yeah, it's one contract at a time, meaning Baker Hughes and Equinor. But then once you've got the connection with Baker Hughes, now I can go and do that for let's say Saudi Aramco, and then Baker Hughes will then want us to do, for example, 3D manufacturing with Shell, and so it starts to expand. But you don't have to do the connection twice with the same company.
And the connection is typically interfacing with their back office systems?
Yeah, we connect to the ERP systems. So ultimately, I think what people, I know people are going to go to escrow accounts. So they make an automated payment from an escrow account, and we reflect the debit and the credit in the ERP systems. But starting out, what we're doing is we're putting a pre-approved invoice into the ERP for the next ERP run, so that we're just tying into the existing payment cycle.
Hey, help us understand this. When you think about the sales cycle, how much is Baker Hughes having to corral its top vendors and partners to see if they're going to come on board before they commit? Like, are you seeing that happen in the sales cycle, and how is that affecting the time of the sales cycle?
No, well, you asked me two different questions.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a contract by contract ramp up. So typically you go to customer A and they say, we'd like to, well, I'll give you a specific example. Equinor said, we'd like to be able to automate our water haulage with Nubera, and that we just do one. And then they go and say, okay, now we'd like to be able to do it with multiple other ones. So it expands over time. And the sales cycle, as Brad's been around us, hearing this pitch for 5 years now, I think. When we were first talking, everybody thought we were nuts about this blockchain stuff, and the sales cycle was horrendous. Now we're looking at one right now. We're closing and delivering in 60 days. So that's nice to be able to see that collapse in the sales cycle.
That's great.
Are you guys having discussions beyond energy right now? And if so, I guess what industries have you had the best reception in? Mining is one that we've had pretty advanced discussions with. We've all kinds of different agriculture ones. But your question is correct. The leading question, leading the witness. It doesn't really matter what the commodity is. It can be mining, it could be metals. So part of the plan as we get towards the end of the year is, okay, raise more money and then deliberately go into new step out verticals so that we can, it's a land grab. You want the network to be as big as possible, right?
You said round out the Series B with $5 million. How big is the whole Series B?
11 million.
11.
Well, I think we're about there. Andrew, thanks for presenting Data Gumbo this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thank you all for your time. It's good to see you all again. Brad, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Venu, good to see you again. Take care.
Good to see you, Andrew. Take
Bye-bye.
care. All right. The next company presenter that we have is MacroFab. MacroFab, and we're a couple of minutes early. I'll give the judges a couple seconds to breathe and to see if they need to input any of the information into the scoring. Judges, remember that it's helpful to score as we go along. And we're on up to our fourth company. We'll do 5 companies and then take a 30-minute break. So after 2 more companies, you'll have a few minutes for a break. And with that, I will turn it over to Misha, who will present MacroFab. Misha, welcome this afternoon.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. And great to see everybody here. Some of you I've met in person, so good to see you again. My name is Misha Govshteyn. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of MacroFab. MacroFab is an electronics manufacturing platform. And what we're really doing is we're reimagining the manufacturing process as a cloud service. Today, this space is Byzantine and very complex, and we are rebuilding it as a software-enabled service that makes life much easier for people than it currently behaves. So this market is incredibly inefficient and also very large. Overall, the electronics manufacturing market is over $500 billion worldwide. Our total addressable market is the mid-volume of that manufacturing. So when you think about the market we're focused on, it is specifically focused on mid-volume, and that means it's industrial products, oil and gas related products, aerospace and defense, medical, automotive, but it's not consumer electronics. That's in fact majority of the products built out there. So it's mid-volume jobs, anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars all the way to millions of dollars. In North America, that's about an $80 billion market. So it's a very large space in which to operate a platform like this one. And one of the best things about this segment is not just that it's large, but also it's that the customers are uniquely miserable. The net promoter score here is -3. One of the biggest problems is that people are tightly coupled to their factory. So if you can remember to your data center days before the cloud, a lot of it is very similar. You're hard assigned to a factory. Even if you have a very diverse catalog of products, you are usually at one factory. And in fact, that factory is good at building some things and not others. And it's a fixed resource pool. So when a larger customer starts building ahead of you or places a larger order, your orders are delayed, your orders are coming in with lower quality. So you get uneven quality if you're not the best possible customer for that factory, right? MacroFab turns that model on its head. We turn manufacturing into an elastic resource, and we software define it. So we essentially can place these jobs on any factory floor in our network. Today we have 75 factories all over North America. So we have small factories in Canada, small and mid-sized factories in the United States, and then very large factories in Mexico, which allows our customers the flexibility to go from small projects and prototypes all the way to mid-volume production without having to go to China, right? So it's a very different model, and it saves them a lot of time and a lot of money in terms of overhead. What a lot of people don't realize is that when they interact with these factories and when they spend time buying the services, none of it quite works right. There's always waiting phone calls and emails. With us, pricing is instant. You get to see where your jobs are going, and as a result, our net promoter score is 75. How does it work? Our model is driven by algorithms, right? So our software knows exactly what runs on every factory floor. We know what kind of machines they have. We know what kind of quality they can produce. And ultimately, the customer experience starts on their desktop, right? They're designing electronics products in their CAD tools. They can literally drag and drop their CAD design to our platform, get an instant price quote an order. Usually these orders will be up to $20,000 online, and place an order online on their credit card. Very similar to how we saw software as a service start initially, right? The delivery model and really the business model behind MacroFab is that of a managed marketplace. So We are the market maker. We will take these manufacturing jobs, we will book these orders, and once they're booked, we will put them into our marketplace where our factories can either accept or deny them. Only factories that are qualified to build those jobs will actually be shown the jobs. So by definition, we are matching up the job with just the right factory. And that's one of the ways that we get much better leverage and much better results out of the factory space that we have. These factories, by the way, are only 2/3 utilized. So they always have stranded capacity, right? There's about $30 billion in underutilized factory space in North America. And that is essentially the resource that we're selling to our customers, right? They subscribe to this factory capacity through our platform. And when I've met some of you a couple of years ago, we had a very different go-to-market model. We primarily sold to engineers. And in fact, a lot of these companies have engineers that come and use our platform. You know, we ship product to about 1,200 customers last year alone. But some of those customers have started adopting our platform for larger and larger production runs. So we had a breakout year in terms of bookings last year, tripled to $33 million. So 6 million of that is booked online, and those are transactional credit card orders. But the rest of it is larger and larger manufacturing jobs where companies are actually going to production with us or even reshoring. So some of our largest customers are leaving China and moving towards Mexico or the United States.
Misha, I think your time is up for your presentation.
Yeah, this is good.
All right, panelists, I'll turn it over to you to ask whatever questions you may have.
So Misha, great progress. It's basically a marketplace, right? So classic chicken and egg marketplace problem.
That's right.
How do you make sure you have enough manufacturers? How do you kind of balance liquidity in the marketplace?
Yeah, it is not supply constrained. Out of the 75 factories that we have now, it is way more capacity than we can currently subscribe. So we front run it, right? We make sure that we have enough factories in a marketplace to accept the jobs, and we really focus on diversity of those factories. What matters is, do we have enough high volume factories versus low volume factories? Some of them specialize, and to give you an example, Tesla became a customer last year, started as a small prototype job, turned into a couple of $100,000 worth of work, but only 3 factories out of our 75 are authorized to build for them because of their unique requirements. So it's a matter of making sure that we have the right factories, but capacity itself is not really a problem for us. In fact, we have giant factories in Mexico that can absorb very large volume jobs.
So your go-to-market with the customers for the factories is inside direct sales? How do you sell it?
We initially enter customer engagements through self-service sales, and that's a content marketing driven sale and a word of mouth driven sale. It's very, very, I mean, I was there at the very beginning of the SaaS days. A lot of Gmail accounts, but when you look at where they're shipping it, it's going to NASA, it's going to Ford and GM. So we then call into those accounts and inside reps do deals between $50,000 to $500,000, and then we have one enterprise rep. And we have 6 contracts that are over $1 million, and the largest one is about $6 million a year.
Misha, obviously, one of the things that I'm sure you focus on is what happens when a customer starts to scale volume. Do they then kind of transition to a direct relationship with the manufacturing? What have you seen so far on that? And related to that, what are you seeing on repeat designs by the same customer on your platform?
Yeah, in terms of production versus prototype, in volume, 86% of all units shipped for us are production units. And then that's reflected in the revenue mix as well. Typically, not always, but typically self-service customers will be prototype customers versus sales-driven customers will be production customers. 6 million out of 33 was booked last year and was prototype versus production. Now, the problem where the customers get too big for us, it will happen with customers that are scaling to, let's say, above $5 million per year per product. But in the space that we're going after, it's not a major issue. In fact, we haven't had a customer graduate yet. If we were to go, we have customers in Amazon and we have customers in Google, but we're never going to build consumer electronics at high enough volume and low enough margins. That's not our market. So by staying disciplined about which customers we're going after, we really never hit that $5 million point. But above $5 million, they can get a cheaper price from somebody else, and we don't compete for those customers. And Venu, just to be clear, that $80 billion market, it doesn't include anybody who would graduate into that space, right?
Misha, what's your biggest challenge right now in terms of that you're trying to solve, and and raising capital? What do you plan to do with it?
Believe it or not, and it's not a capital issue. I think some of it is just being there when the inflection point happens. But believe it or not, it's gender gap, not gender gap, age gap, right? The engineers are young, and they're the ones that get attracted to our platform. They're digital natives. You don't have to explain to them why it's bizarre to go pick up the phone and call somebody to talk to them. So they're the biggest champions. In fact, even when we win our biggest deals, the engineers are the ones that are championing the product, and they're the ones going to supply chain saying, I'm sick of being on your conference calls, and you're always bugging me with useless questions. If this was digitized, it would work a whole lot better. But let's be honest, the people that we meet in a supply chain world are very much at the end of their careers. So some of them are more adventurous than others, and that's a market acceptance in a problem, right? I think eventually there's going to be an inflection point where you might get fired if you're not moving fast enough. So if you're ordering from China and you're swallowing 6-month lead times when you could be ordering from a platform like ours, and we work we flex the marketplace, and we find the best possible lead time for you, which could be in Mexico. So it's much faster and is delivered with higher quality. At some point, those supply chain people are going to buy in as well. So we win with supply chain people right now, but that point where the light bulb goes off and it becomes broadly accepted, to be honest, I don't know exactly when it's going to happen. It's starting, the space is accelerating. Just yesterday, there was a financing for $120 million in India because there is a manufacturing marketplace that has taken off. So it's happening over and over again. And I think eventually these stories are going to be mainstream.
And what has worked for you from an acquisition standpoint on the demand side? On the supply side, you said you kind of just stay ahead of it and call the manufacturing plants. But on the demand side, they're obviously not coming directly. Only 20% of them are coming online directly. The remaining 80%, is it just a traditional inside sales model?
Inside sales with an enterprise overlay. So these inside reps will usually come. And really what we're doing is we're proving up the model with these companies. So with a lot of those enterprise companies, the ones that are not in $1 million+ $1 million spend range yet, we're still proving ourselves up. So with Stanley Black & Decker, it's a couple of $100,000 worth of work. Same range with Apex Tool Group and with Emerson. And Emerson is a fascinating customer. It's 191 business units and a huge product catalog. Not a single one of their products is large enough for Flex to really care about. So those enterprise reps get involved when it's time to actually go penetrate that account deeper. And we're developing more and more ABM muscles to go land and expand within those large enterprise accounts.
And when do you get out? This is against my grain to say this, or my fabric to say this, but when do you go beyond electronics?
No current plan. And there are currently marketplaces that are very similar to ours, which are focused on mechanical parts. Xometry is going to go public this year. They made yet another acquisition offer for us last quarter, and we again declined. So I think eventually customers will want a manufacturing cloud where you can buy the full product. They want plastics, they want metals, they want electronics, they want assembly, storage. I think we're not there yet where there is a single company that can fulfill those. So I think right now we have to stay vertically focused. I do think over time we will see consolidation, and I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon jumped into this space, because if you think about just giant industries, there's not enough of those for Amazon to go dominate. They're going to dive into the space eventually.
Misha, thanks very much. The time is up. Misha, thanks for presenting MacroFab this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we have one final company that will present, and then we will take a brief break. Remember that two of the startups that present in this track, the Astros track, will advance to the finals. And so there will be 6 teams tomorrow afternoon that present in the final round. We will announce those finalists at 5 o'clock today. So after we come back from the break, we'll have the 5 final companies, and then we will announce the teams that will advance to the final round at 5 o'clock. Don't forget, though, that startups who participate in this competition have an opportunity to win a major investment prize, even if they do not advance to the finals. So just because a startup doesn't advance the finals doesn't necessarily mean that they will not win a major investment prize. All right, so with that, looks like Chris, you are here. I'm pleased to introduce Chris Buckner, who will present Mainline today. Chris, I see you unmuted yourself. Looks like your slides are ready. So if you're ready, when you're ready, you can start.
I'm ready. Thank you all so much. I'm going to start my timer so that I make sure I adhere. Before I even read any part of this slide, you'll notice the first word is esports. For those of you who may not know what esports is, and that's okay, it's competitive gaming. If you weren't aware, it's very real. And if you don't think it's real, just check your credit card statements. You might see your kids buying up a bunch of stuff on Fortnite through microtransactions. But nowadays, your kids can actually get scholarships to major colleges and universities, and it's Mainline's job to partner with those colleges and universities to run sanctioned esports tournaments, and that's what our software does, end-to-end execution of those tournaments. So
I don't see a slide. Are we supposed to be seeing something now?
You should be seeing the homepage. I can stop and reshare if I need to.
Okay.
Let's try another one. I got it all over the place here. Let's see if you were able to see this one. All right. Do you see the first slide?
I do.
Okay. Now, do you see the second slide?
I see what it looks like, your cover slide, eSport tournament software.
Let's try, I've got one more I can give a shot on. I apologize, everybody. And if this doesn't work.
I think we're just in your PowerPoint. We're not on the presentation mode. We're on the.
Okay.
Can you
let's try this now. Can you now see the second slide?
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
All right, I'll haul then here. So as y'all may know, gaming itself is $160 billion industry. This is driven by those microtransactions. The professional esports industry, according to pretty much every research you can find out there, is a $1 billion industry. But where we really concentrate is in this amateur esports, which we feel is pretty untapped, with a TAM of roughly $2 billion. And this is driven by the licensing of our platform, sponsorship revenue, subscription, and the data aggregation and licensing. Unfortunately or fortunately, COVID made us explode because people were looking for a new solution, specifically in the college space, for traditional sports being kind of gone. And so right now, Mainline is actually the most used collegiate esports software by our media rights partnerships. And we, as you'll see here, our licensing rev share data aggregation is really what's leading the charge. Our revenue model is fairly simple. We do have a licensed tournament software that we provide to the schools to run end-to-end execution of their esports tournaments. This is done on a semesterly basis. We also have a sponsorship rev share with the multimedia rights partners, Learfield IMG, Fox, Van Wagner. We have a sponsorship rev share on the national sponsorship deals. We do have a remote broadcast and production side of the company to support these competitions. And the data licensing piece is actually one of the most attractive pieces because, as you'll see coming up soon, we'll actually be one of the largest data aggregators in the space. And quickly, you'll see our traction. Q4 of last year, 67 schools. By Q2, we're actually already, through our media rights deals, going to have access to 527 schools and 34 conferences, which gives us around 59% of the total market by MMRs. The tournament software itself, the reason that we were able to grow quickly, take over market share, was compared to our competitors, there wasn't a solution that was white labeled. We have plenty of competitors, Face It, Smash, Challenge, Battlefy, Tournament, but none of them were a B2B solution that could scale and white label quickly enough to give ownership to that platform for new sponsorship inventory and sanctioned esports tournaments at a school. We are extremely flexible, able to handle any format of tournament play. We will be the largest data aggregator by 2022 of collegiate gameplay. And our competitive advantage is we were told very quickly, we even had some competitors come in and try to offer their services for free to our biggest partners. Like you'll see on the right, we did run Madden's official collegiate esports league alongside Learfield IMG, ran Big 12s. Nobody could scale, nobody had the team, nobody had a solution that was able to be as flexible as ours. Obviously a lot of text here. The two most important things, I come from a background of a few startups, one with an exit. Our chief product officer comes from Home Depot running the blinds project there. But the two most notable, Toby Wyman and his experience with NCAA, NFL, MLB, NBA, he knew the media rights space extremely well, and it got us in the door really quickly. And then Billy Sprout was the biggest deal we've gotten. He ran all of collegiate sports for Blizzard and Activision, and we were able to steal him. And with that, right at 5 minutes, I am here and open for questions.
Good. All right, we'll turn now to questions from the panel.
Great progress since the last time we talked to you. Has revenue kind of ramped similarly to the number as you brought on schools, or what's the lag on that?
Considerably. So in 2019, we did about $30,000 worth of recurring revenue. In 2020, we did $700,000 worth of recurring revenue in licensing, and we're projected to do about $3 million in recurring revenue from the licensing of the platform. That's pretty much the absolute minimum that we're going to be accepting. We have stretch and stretch plus scenarios, but it is ramped up fairly quickly. And then now we're running leagues, like official leagues alongside the publishers and developers, which has been a massive opportunity to grow that revenue as well. And then we'll probably do another $1.5 million on remote broadcast and production. And none of that takes into consideration the licensing of the data, which is already going to be happening this spring with Learfield IMG for their content site.
So Chris, piggybacking on Tom's question, how do you look at the expansion that's happening, like the time to some optimal level of revenue and from when you close a deal, right? How long does it take to get to the revenue point, ideal revenue point, whether that's a 20% penetration or 80%, tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So the reason we do the deals with the MMRs, we do enterprise level proposals or agreements with the MMRs where our master services agreement actually comes from the top level, and then the schools actually opt in. So under Learfield IMG in the spring alone, we'll have 100 schools individually that are opting in. Those schools get charged $2,500 per tournament. And most of the schools do 1, 2, or 3, but we have already started seeing some schools doing 5 tournaments, especially the California schools. Our margin right now is roughly about 50% margin on those deals through the licensing agreements, but that's because there's so much education going on in the space that we do have to do a lot of hand holding, a lot of white gloving. But we do have an admin portal in place that we will be providing where schools can actually sign up on their own, import their own sponsorships, and now you're looking at a 90% rev share, a margin on those deals. So as we move into, we're doing a lot of conference stuff right now. The time that it takes to get those onboarded is only about a week at a conference level. And then we have to work with the publishers and deal with brand standards. But I hope that answered your question. I was trying to show a little bit about margin and then our processes moving forward.
So Chris, in that context, so when you talk about the $2,500 per live sport per event, is that inclusive of production services, or is that just licensing of your core platform?
That's just licensing of a single elimination, one tournament. And then the production is 3,000 or 6,000 a half day or a full day production with about a 50% margin on the production as well. Learfield IMG wants to do 50% of their 100 schools that are coming on in the spring to do production. So that's going to be a big deal. And then as the schools expand on double elimination, round robin, Swiss, any type of other format, that actually increases the costs as well. And then from a national perspective, Learfield IMG is going to be selling a national sponsor to those 100 schools. It's going to be called the Challenger Series, and we see 10% rev share on that.
So what's an average school worth to you on purely the recurring revenue platform versus production revenue in addition to that?
Yeah, sure. $10,000 roughly is the average per school that comes on board from a recurring revenue on a yearly basis. On a production basis, it's $6,000 on average on a yearly basis. Remember, because of the way that schools work, they do it by semesters instead of monthly recurring revenue. And then on top of that, we do have the rev share from any advertisers that are sold. So you can look at around 16,000 as the minimum, or I say as the minimum, as the average right now. But like I mentioned, the schools, once they do their first semester, they usually start increasing to 3-4 tournaments, expanded tournament structures, and that increases the cost. But right now, especially this spring with hundreds of schools coming on board, that's our average right now.
I think you mentioned, at the beginning of this year, a number of universities are looking for new software. What were they using previously? Are you stealing from, direct competitors, or is it just kind of new? If any color there would be helpful.
Sure. So, a lot of the varsity teams or club programs were using open software systems. That's that Face It, Smash, Challenge, Battlefy tournament. And we want them to keep using those. Those are not white labeled. They are simply a student can go in and create their own tournament or play in a tournament. Ours is actually sanctioned both with the IP marks of the school and alongside the publishers and developers, which is the first time that that's ever happened. So we were pretty much the first people into the space, and we were able to grab that market control through the MMRs. None of the MMRs were using any software. So we were able to kind of block out and put a moat around us. We do know Play Versus, which is one of the biggest, $103 million in funding, was trying to throw a couple Hail Marys into the space. We were able to block them from all of our MMR partners. And in fact, we're actually getting ready to start taking over some of their state associations in the high school space. So the state associations, you can liken that to like Learfield IMG, Van Wagner, or Fox, but in the high school space.
Got it.
So how big do you think, just if you did your math of per school revenue potential, how big is the market looking at it from bottoms up that way?
Well, I actually have those hard numbers. If you're looking at everything from the licensing, the rev share, the data, and then you start looking at things like subscriptions, where you're doing a B2C model where you're actually charging the students just like intramurals to get involved. Our stretch this year alone gets us to about $7 to $8 million. And remember, we're starting in some of the MMRs, we're actually starting at the conference level. So I'll try not to confuse things too much. At the conference level, you're looking at $30,000 to $50,000 a semester at a conference level. And then we're trickling down into those schools. And so what happens is all of these schools now are using our software as the open qualifying platform for their conference championships. So there is, I would say it's a very, very, very good chance we have 85% of the Division I market right now through the MMRs, that by the end of the year, publishers will be coming to us to say, hey, we want you to just go ahead and run all the open qualifiers for your tournaments at each individual school since you're there. And then they'll go up into, essentially a closed qualifier or a finals event like we did with Madden in our system as well. So our stretch right now this year has us between 6 and 7 just for this year alone. I don't want to misappropriate. We actually have all of these numbers exactly on how big it is, and I will send that out afterwards because I don't want to pull up something and mess this up here.
Hey, Brad, before you cut him off, I have one question I always like to ask him. How many universities now offer scholarships for esports athletes? So I know I missed my calling by being too old for this.
Me too. And my parents were like, get off the video games. And now that NCAA football is coming back, I'm sorry, guys, I'm quitting. I'm going to go back and become a professional NCAA football guy. But right now, 170 schools tout a varsity program. And of those 170 schools, about 20% of them are offering scholarships. But you do have massive, it's usually the smaller schools that have the bigger scholarships because they don't have traditional sports programs. But you do have schools like Ohio State, Utah, that are offering huge scholarships. And then our partners, Learfield IMG, we ran ESPN's Collegiate Esports Championship last year. They're doing hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of scholarships right now for just for winning those competitions.
Crazy.
Wow.
I know, it's insane.
Super. Chris, thanks so much. Well, you've also stopped telling my 14-year-old to get off his devices at night, and I should encourage him to stay on as long as possible.
I'm telling you, I wish I would have done it. I'm a little too old now because the prime age is 17 for like League of Legends, and then you're too old at 18, by the way.
All right. Well, my son's got 3 years to make the pros, I guess, and to get my college tuition reduced.
Tell him to watch out for that carpal tunnel. It's just like a torn ACL in regular football.
All right. Chris, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon and presenting Mainline.
Of course, thank you guys so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. So now we have gone through the first five, the first half of the teams that will present, the startups that will present this afternoon. Judges, if you're a judge, don't forget to fill in your scores so you remember what you thought of each of the first five. We will take a break and we will come back and you'll hear from the last of the startup presenters. So we have five more that will present today. We will come back at 3 o'clock. Sorry, it is almost 3 o'clock now. We will come back at 3:30. So please be back here at 3:30 and you will hear from the final five startups. So go take a break, go get a cup of coffee, go get a snack and come back here at 3:30 and we'll see you back here in just a little while. Thanks. Thanks to all the presenters the first five who presented this afternoon.